Grand Marshal Dominic Reeves clenched his jaw as the Nixtari Supreme Commander's hologram flickered before the United Earth Defense Council. The alien's phosphorescent eyes pulsed with barely concealed contempt as it delivered what it clearly thought was a generous ultimatum. "Your species is amusing," Supreme Commander Vorthak said, mandibles clicking in what intelligence suggested was their gesture of mockery. "Look at your vessels, covered in external lights, requiring constant illumination for navigation. Even your combat systems depend on visual targeting. How primitive, to be so afraid of the darkness between stars." The council chamber remained silent. Humanity's first encounter with the Nixtari 3 months ago had quickly devolved from diplomatic contact to open hostility. The aliens had evolved, in the perpetual darkness of their home system's asteroid fields, developing natural abilities to navigate and fight in absolute darkness. "We offer you mercy," Vorthak continued. "Submit to Nixtari guidance. We will teach your kind to overcome your evolutionary weakness. Perhaps in a few centuries you might even learn to venture into true darkness without your pathetic illumination. Systems." Captain Regina Walsh, standing beside Reeves, subtly touched the datapad in her hands. On it, classified footage showed the latest tests of Project Erebus, humanity's answer to the Nixtari challenge. The aliens had no idea what humanity had been developing in secret since long before first contact. "Supreme Commander," Reeves spoke carefully, maintaining the facade of diplomatic restraint. "Humanity acknowledges our evolutionary history with darkness. But you seem to have made certain assumptions about how we've dealt with that history." "Assumptions?" Vorthak's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what analysts interpreted as derisive amusement. "We've studied your ships, your tactics, your desperate reliance on artificial lighting. You fear what you cannot see. It makes you weak. The darkness between stars belongs to the Nixtari." Reeves allowed himself a small smile. "Perhaps we should discuss this further. Our fleet will withdraw to the Sigma Void for negotiations, though I warn you, it's quite dark there." The Nixtari commander's patterns pulsed with triumph. They believed humanity was retreating to a location where they'd have every advantage. After all, the Sigma Void was a vast region of space where nearby stellar phenomena absorbed nearly all electromagnetic radiation. Perfect darkness. "A wise choice," Vorthak said. "We accept. Though I doubt your ships will even be able to navigate there without throwing light signatures across half the sector." After the transmission ended, Captain Walsh finally allowed herself to smile. "They really believe it, don't they? That we never learned to master darkness ourselves?" "That's their fatal flaw," Reeves said, activating a secure hologram showing the true capabilities of Earth's fleet. "They think our ancient fear of darkness made us weak. They never considered it might have driven us to become something far more dangerous than they could imagine." The hologram showed Earth vessels undergoing their final modifications. Special coating that absorbed all light, quantum-entangled communication systems that required no detectable transmissions, and the revolutionary Umbra targeting system that turned darkness itself into a weapon. "Humanity didn't just overcome our fear of darkness," Reeves said, watching the preparations with grim satisfaction. "We spent thousands of years learning to become what others fear in the dark. The Nixtari think they're luring us into a trap. They have no idea they're about to discover what humanity's mastery of darkness really means." Captain Walsh nodded, her expression hardening. "They mock what they don't understand. They see our lighting systems, our illuminated ships, and think they've measured the full extent of our capabilities." "A deliberate deception," Reeves confirmed. "Let them think us primitive. Let them believe their mastery of darkness is superior. When Project Erebus activates in the Sigma Void," he let the sentence hang. "How long should we maintain the facade?" Walsh asked. "Let them think they're hunting us in the dark?" Reeves watched the hologram shift to show the full extent of Earth's hidden fleet, vessels that had been operating in perfect darkness for years, waiting for this moment. Long enough for them to commit their full force to the void. Let them think they have us trapped in the darkness they believe we fear. And then? And then we show them why humanity's ancient fear of darkness became every other species' worst nightmare. We didn't just learn to operate in darkness, Captain. We learned to make it serve us in ways they never imagined possible. As the council chamber cleared, Reeves sent the activation codes for Project Erebus. Soon, the Nixtari would learn the true cost of mocking humanity's relationship with darkness. They thought humans feared the dark because we needed light to survive. They were about to discover that we'd mastered darkness itself, precisely because we had once feared it. Deep within Earth's most secure military facility, buried beneath the Antarctic ice, Dr. Ryoko Nakamura stood before the assembled military leadership. Behind her, through the reinforced viewing window, the prototype of Project Erebus hung in a massive testing chamber designed to simulate the absolute darkness of deep space. For too long, the Nixtari have believed their evolutionary adaptation to darkness makes them superior. She began, her voice steady despite the weight of expectation in the room. They see our ship's external lighting systems and assume they understand the full extent of human capabilities. That assumption ends today. The chamber's lights dimmed until even the emergency indicators went dark. In the viewing room, only the faint glow of essential displays remained. Through the window, the prototype vessel seemed to disappear completely, absorbing every photon that touched its hull. Project Erebus began long before we encountered the Nixtari, Ryoko continued. Humanity's ancient relationship with darkness drove us to understand it, master it in ways no other species has imagined. While they evolved to see in darkness, we evolved to become one with it. Colonel Marcus Harrison, the project's military liaison, stepped forward. The Nixtari's natural ability to navigate in darkness relies on detecting the faintest electromagnetic emissions. But what happens when they face an enemy that doesn't just hide in darkness but becomes darkness itself? Ryoko activated a holographic display showing the prototype's internal systems. The outer hull uses quantum-aligned carbon structures that don't just absorb light, they capture and redirect electromagnetic energy. Traditional stealth technology tries to reduce emissions. We've created a ship that hunts using darkness itself. The assembled officers leaned forward as Ryoko demonstrated the revolutionary targeting system. The Umbra array doesn't emit energy to detect targets. Instead, it reads the subtle distortions in the background radiation of space itself. The darker it gets, the more effective our targeting becomes. What about communication? General Torres asked. The Nixtari can detect even quantum transmissions. Ryoko smiled. That's where things get interesting, Dr. Jackson. Dr. William Jackson, the project's quantum mechanics expert, stepped up to the hologram. We've developed what we call the shadow network. Instead of transmitting data, we manipulate the quantum state of artificial dark matter strands connecting our ships. There's nothing to detect because we're not sending signals, we're shifting the properties of darkness itself. The prototype in the chamber suddenly moved, executing a series of complex maneuvers in perfect silence and total darkness. Even knowing where to look, the assembled officers could barely track its movement. The Nixtari believe darkness is their ally, Colonel Harrison said. They think humans fear it, that we're limited by our evolutionary past. They don't understand that our fear of darkness didn't make us weak. It drove us to master it completely. Ryoko brought up the tactical simulations. In 2 weeks, the Nixtari will enter the Sigma Void, expecting to find our conventional fleet stumbling blind in the darkness. Instead, they'll encounter vessels that don't just operate in darkness, they weaponize it. The simulation showed Earth vessels executing combat maneuvers that seemed to defy physics, using the total darkness of the void to move in ways that would be impossible in normal space. The darker it gets, the more powerful we become. Every shadow is a weapon, every void a pathway. How soon can we deploy the full fleet? General Torres asked, unable to hide his amazement. The modifications are already complete, Colonel Lee, Harrison replied. We've been preparing for this moment since we first detected the Nixtari approaching our space. They think they're springing a trap. In reality, we've been laying our own. Dr. Jackson pulled up the final test results. The Nixtari evolved to navigate in darkness, but humans? We evolved to hunt in it, to become one with it. Their natural abilities are impressive, but they're nothing compared to what science and human ingenuity have achieved. Ryoko faced the assembled leadership. When humanity first looked into the darkness between stars, we saw something that terrified us. But we didn't run from that fear. We embraced it, studied it, mastered it. The Nixtari mock what they don't understand. They're about to learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to create light. She gestured to the invisible prototype, now completely undetectable in the darkened chamber. Our greatest strength is our drive to master what we once feared. The Nixtari think darkness is their domain. We're about to show them what true masters of darkness can do. As the briefing concluded, General Torres approached Ryoko privately. The Nixtari intercepted our withdrawal orders. They think we're running scared, retreating into the darkness of the Sigma Void. Ryoko's expression hardened. Let them think that. Let them believe their mockery of our primitive fear has driven us to desperation. When Project Erebus activates, they'll learn why the smartest predators are the ones you never see coming. In the testing chamber, the prototype continued its silent maneuvers, invisible and untraceable. Soon, an entire fleet of these vessels would demonstrate why humanity's ancient fear of darkness had become the galaxy's deadliest weapon. The Sigma Void lived up to its reputation. No starlight penetrated its depths, creating a darkness so absolute it seemed to swallow hope itself. Within this perfect blackness, Supreme Commander Vorthak's flagship led the Nixtari assault fleet. Their bioluminescent hulls dimmed to bare minimum functionality. The humans continue their charade. Vorthak's second-in-command, War Master Kral, reported with obvious amusement. Their vessels maintain full illumination, broadcasting their position to anyone within 50 light-years. Vorthak's sensory appendages pulsed with satisfaction. The human fleet had retreated deeper into the void exactly as predicted, their ship's external lights creating a trail even a blind creature could follow. Their primitive dependence on illumination would be their undoing. Status of their fleet? Vorthak demanded, mandibles clicking in anticipated triumph. 27 vessels, all maintaining standard formation. Their power signatures suggest they're struggling to maintain basic systems in these conditions. Kral's bioluminescent patterns shifted to indicate cruel amusement. They clustered together like prey animals around a fire. Vorthak prepared to give the attack order when something caught his attention. A subtle distortion in the void space, barely noticeable even to Nixtari senses. War Master, conduct a full spectrum analysis of Sector 7. Before Kral could respond, the tactical officer's patterns flared in alarm. Commander, multiple anomalies detected. The human vessels, they're disappearing. One by one, the illuminated human ships winked out of existence. Not through any visible means of cloaking or stealth technology, but as if the darkness itself was consuming them. The Nixtari fleet's sophisticated sensors scrambled to maintain lock on targets that seemed to dissolve into the void. Impossible, Vorthak hissed. No species can operate without some form of emission. Find them. Sir. The sensor officer's bioluminescence pulsed with panic. We're detecting nothing. No radiation, no quantum signatures, no... The officer fell silent as new data scrolled across his display. Wait, we're picking up movement in the void, but it's wrong, as if the darkness itself is moving. Vorthak felt the first stirring of genuine fear. The humans hadn't been retreating in panic. Those illuminated ships hadn't been their real fleet at all. The first attack came from directly beneath the Nixtari flagship. A vessel darker than the void itself emerged from nothingness, its weapons already firing. But instead of conventional energy weapons, it launched what appeared to be concentrated streams of absolute darkness, negative space that consumed everything it touched. Full evasive, Vorthak roared. All vessels, activate maximum bioluminescence. We need light. Sir, we've lost contact with the entire rear guard, Kral reported, his patterns showing clear distress. Something is out there moving between our ships, but our sensors we can't. On the flagship's main viewer, Vorthak watched in horror as patches of space seemed to bend and twist. Human vessels phased into existence for split seconds, before vanishing again, each appearance accompanied by devastating attacks that somehow turned the Nixtari's mastery of darkness against them. "This is Grand Marshal Reeves of the United Earth Defense Force," a calm human voice transmitted across all frequencies. "You mocked our fear of darkness, Commander Vorthak, but you never asked yourselves why we feared it, why our species spent millennia developing ways to master it." Another Nixtari cruiser vanished from tactical displays, consumed by what appeared to be living shadow. Vorthak's flagship shuddered as something unseen scraped against its hull, leaving behind cold spots that their sensors couldn't penetrate. "You evolved to survive in darkness," Reeves continued, his voice carrying an edge of grim satisfaction. "But humans, we evolved to become the darkness, to turn our greatest fear into our greatest weapon. Look around you, Commander. What you're experiencing isn't just advanced technology. It's the culmination of humanity's long journey from fearing the dark to becoming one with it." "All vessels fall back," Vorthak ordered, his composure finally breaking. "Activate all emergency illumination systems. Get us out of this void." But retreat proved impossible. The human vessels, now completely undetectable except for the destruction they left in their wake, had encircled the Nixtari fleet. Every attempt to navigate out of the void was met with attacks that seemed to come from the darkness itself. "Sir," Krall reported, his patterns now showing pure terror, "we've lost 40% of the fleet. Our remaining vessels report the darkness is alive. It's hunting them." Vorthak watched as another shadow vessel briefly materialized alongside his flagship. For a moment he caught a glimpse of its hull, not merely black, but something that seemed to bend light and space around it. This wasn't just stealth technology. The humans had found a way to manipulate darkness itself. "You should have studied Earth's history more carefully," Reeves's voice came again. "You would have learned that humans don't just overcome their fears. We master them, transform them, weaponize them. You thought our fear of darkness made us weak. Now you understand. It made us the deadliest predators your kind has ever encountered." As his fleet crumbled around him, Vorthak finally understood their critical error. The Nixtari had evolved to exist in darkness, but humans? They had evolved to conquer it, and in doing so, they had become something far more terrifying than anything that naturally evolved in the dark. Aboard the UES Shadowbringer, Grand Marshal, Reeves watched the tactical display as Project Erebus entered its final phase. The electromagnetic dead zone of the Sigma Void had become a hunting ground, and humanity's darkness-forged vessels were the apex predators. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the historic nature of this moment. "Captain Regina," Walsh responded from her station, her fingers dancing across controls that emitted no light. "Umbra systems operating at peak efficiency. The darker it gets, the clearer we see. Shadow Network reports all vessels synchronized through quantum darkness strings." Dr. Ryoko Nakamura's voice came through the Shadow Network, untraceable even, to Nixtari sensors. "The void matter generators are exceeding expectations. We're not just hiding in the darkness anymore, we're creating it, shaping it, weaponizing it in ways they never imagined possible." On the tactical display, red dots, representing Nixtari ships, continued to vanish as Earth's Shadow Fleet executed their carefully planned assault. The aliens' once proud formation had devolved into chaos, their natural affinity for darkness proving worthless against an enemy that had mastered it on a quantum level. "Sir," Walsh reported, "the Nixtari are attempting to compensate by increasing their bioluminescent outputs. They think more light will save them." Reeves allowed himself a grim smile. "They still don't understand. Initiate Phase 4. Throughout the void, Earth vessels activated their most devastating capability. The quantum-aligned carbon hulls began absorbing not just light, but the very essence of darkness itself. Zones of absolute nothingness spread between the stars, creating patches of space where even the Nixtari's evolved senses couldn't function. "By all the stars," War Master Krall's intercepted transmission crackled through the void. "They're not just using the darkness, they're controlling it. How is this possible?" We are the masters of the void. You merely adapted to the darkness, Reeves transmitted back. Humanity forged it into something new, something even your evolved senses can't comprehend. The Shadowbringers' systems hummed as they channeled void energy through pathways that defied conventional physics. Around them, space itself seemed to twist and fold, creating corridors of pure darkness that Earth ships could navigate with deadly precision. Dr. Jackson's voice came through the shadow network. Marshall, the quantum field measurements are off. The charts. The Nixtari ship's attempts to generate light are only making our systems more effective. Their energy emissions give us perfect targeting solutions. A massive Nixtari dreadnought suddenly appeared on their port side, its hull blazing with desperate bioluminescence. Before it could bring weapons to bear, the Shadowbringer's void lance activated. A beam of concentrated darkness, the absolute absence of everything, lanced out and connected with the alien vessel. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The dreadnought's light didn't dim or fade. It simply ceased to exist in the areas touched by the void lance. Sections of the massive ship vanished into perfect darkness, as if those portions of reality had been erased from existence. What are you? Supreme Commander Vorthak's transmission carried genuine fear now. What have you become? We are what the darkness taught us to be, Reeves responded. For thousands of years, humanity stared into the abyss. But instead of turning away, we reached into it, learned its secrets, became one with it. The Shadowbringers. Sensors detected multiple Nixtari vessels attempting to escape the void. Their once precise formation had completely broken down, their celebrated mastery of darkness proving useless against an enemy that didn't just inhabit darkness, but commanded it. Marshall, Walsh reported, we're detecting energy buildups in the remaining Nixtari ships. They appear to be preparing to overload their bioluminescent systems, a desperate attempt to create enough light to navigate out of the void. Let them try. Dr. Nakamura's voice held cold certainty. The more energy they release, the more power they give our void matter generators. Their light will only feed our darkness. The void erupted with brilliant illumination as dozens of
Nixtari ships activated emergency protocols, their hulls blazing like newborn stars.
For a moment, the darkness retreated, but only for a moment. The Earth fleet's quantum-aligned hulls absorbed the massive energy release, channeling it through their void matter cores. The darkness that returned was deeper than before, more absolute, more controlled. In this enhanced void, the human vessels moved like ghosts, untraceable and unstoppable. You believed our fear of darkness was a weakness, Reeves transmitted to the failing Nixtari fleet. You never understood that fear drives innovation, forces adaptation, creates revolution. While you were content to merely exist in the darkness, we were learning to become it. The battle, if it could still be called that, was reaching its inevitable conclusion. The Nixtari fleet, once so proud of their natural mastery over darkness, found themselves trapped in a void they no longer understood, hunted by an enemy that had transcended their evolutionary advantages. As another alien vessel disappeared into the artificial night, Reeves reflected on humanity's journey, from huddling around fires in ancient caves to commanding the very essence of darkness itself. The Nixtari had mocked their primitive fear, and in doing so had failed to recognize that fear, properly harnessed, could become the most powerful force in the universe. Supreme Commander Vorthak stood in the shattered command center of his flagship, watching as the last emergency lights flickered and died. Around him, his crew's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with terror, a terror he now shared. The darkness pressing against their hull wasn't natural. It felt alive, hungry, engineered with purpose. War Master, he called out. Status of the remaining fleet? Kral's patterns dimmed before responding. 12 vessels still functional from our original 150. The humans, they've created some kind of artificial dark matter. Our evolved senses can't penetrate it. We're fighting an enemy that has turned darkness itself into a weapon. A new transmission cut through their quantum channels, carrying the voice of Grand Marshal Reeves. Supreme Commander, your fleet is surrounded. Your natural abilities have failed. It's time to acknowledge that your species' evolutionary advantage means nothing against humanity's mastery of darkness. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in frustrated rage. How? How did a species that evolved depending on light achieve this level of dark space manipulation? Because we feared it, Reeves replied, his voice carrying the weight of human history. Every child who ever feared monsters in the dark, every ancestor who huddled around fires in ancient caves, they taught us that darkness was power. While your kind was content to merely exist in darkness, we were driven to understand it, master it, become one with it. The void around the remaining Nixtari ships suddenly shifted, revealing brief glimpses of the Earth vessels. Their hulls seemed to bend reality itself, creating patches of darkness deeper than the space between galaxies. The sight sent primal shivers through even the most hardened Nixtari warriors. Dr. Ryoko Nakamura's voice joined the transmission. Your evolutionary adaptation to darkness was impressive, Commander, but it made you complacent. You never imagined that a primitive species could surpass natural evolution through sheer determination and scientific advancement. As if to demonstrate her point, a human vessel phased into existence beside the Nixtari flagship. Its hull wasn't just dark. It was an absence, a void that hurt to look at. Vorthak watched in horror as tendrils of artificially generated darkness reached out from the ship, moving with deliberate intelligence. The void matter responds to our commands. Now, Dr. Nakamura continued, we've learned to create darkness that even your evolved senses can't penetrate. Your species spent millions of years adapting to natural darkness. We spent thousands of years learning to control it. Captain Walsh's voice cut in, cold and precise. Your remaining vessels are trapped in a quantum darkness field. Every attempt to generate light only feeds our systems. You've lost not just this battle, Commander. You've lost your claim to mastery over darkness itself. Vorthak looked at his tactical display, watching as the artificial darkness consumed all sensor data. Their advanced detection systems, evolved over millions of years, had been rendered useless by human innovation. The species they had mocked as primitive had achieved something his kind had never even imagined possible. Marshal Reeves, Vorthak finally spoke, his patterns showing defeat. The Nixtari fleet surrenders. A wise decision, Reeves responded. Power down your bioluminescence, all of it. For the first time in their species' history, the Nixtari deliberately extinguished their natural light in the presence of an enemy. The darkness that rushed in to fill the void was different from anything they had ever experienced, controlled, purposeful, almost conscious. As the human vessels fully revealed themselves, surrounding the defeated Nixtari fleet, Vorthak finally understood the full magnitude of their error. They had mistaken humanity's evolutionary fear of darkness for weakness, never considering that this very fear might drive them to achieve something unprecedented. Let this be remembered, Reeves transmitted to both fleets. The day the Nixtari learned that natural evolution is no match for human determination. You thought our fear of darkness made us primitive. Instead, it drove us to transform that darkness into something beyond your comprehension. Dr. Nakamura added a final observation. Your kind adapted to survive in darkness, Commander. But humanity? We learned to become the darkness itself. Every shadow you mock, every void you claim to master, we've transformed them all into weapons that serve us. The defeated Nixtari watched as their vessels were escorted out of the Sigma Void by ships that commanded darkness in ways they had never dreamed possible. Their mockery of humanity's primitive fear had led them to this moment, where they learned the hardest lesson any species could face. Never underestimate a race that turns its deepest fears into its greatest strengths. Years later, young Nixtari would learn of this battle in their history lessons. They would learn how their species' natural mastery of darkness meant nothing against an enemy that had scientifically engineered darkness itself. They would learn that the humans hadn't just conquered their fear of the dark, they had transformed it into a power that changed the very nature of space combat forever. And in the darkness between stars, Earth's shadow fleet continued its patrol, a silent reminder that humanity's greatest weakness had become the galaxy's most formidable weapon.